iPhone 7 versus OnePlus 5T. That video is coming up right now. Let's go. So what is up, guys? Nick here, helping you to master your technology. iPhone 7 versus OnePlus 5T. Well, why am I making this comparison? Well, these two phones are actually very close in the price point, and some people might be cross-shopping this just due to this alone. So if you got 500 to 550 bucks, you can get yourself a OnePlus 5T with 64 gigabytes of storage and 6 gigs of RAM. For $559, you can get yourself 8 gigs of RAM here and 128 gigs of storage. Now, for the iPhone 7, you'll notice that this is actually very similar in the price point. $549 will get you 32 gigs, so you're going to get 4 times less storage on this phone, but it's still around the same price point, so you can still get yourself into an iPhone 7 if you were considering yourself a OnePlus 5T. And 128 gigs, you're going to spend quite a bit more than you would on the 128 gigabyte 5T, but they are still pretty close in the price point. If you look secondhand, they might get even closer when it comes to that. So that's why we're comparing them right here. So when deciding between the iPhone 7 and the 5T, you might be thinking, how do they feel in the hand? Which one feels more my money? Well, beginning with the iPhone 7, super light phone here. It's under 150 grams, so it weighs nothing. It's like a feather in the pocket. It's got a premium feel with the aluminum 7000 series on the rear. Some people might say that doesn't feel quite as premium as glass, but I kind of disagree. I really like this whole, aluminum thing that's going on here for the iPhone 7. Now, over here for the 5T, they basically have the same exact thing going on here on the 5T, but the 5T is a little bit heavier just due to it being a larger phone. But they both have fingerprint scanners. We'll talk about those a little bit later. On the front, the glass is about the same on both, but you have way less bezel for the 5T versus the iPhone 7. But overall build quality, both feel 550 bucks. So I wouldn't make my choice based just on the build quality. Okay, so let's discuss display differences between both of them. Now, beginning with Apple's boy, the iPhone 7, you have a P3 color gamut display. Basically, what that means is you're going to get very warm tones, so kind of a yellower look on display. And I'm not saying the display is yellow, but it's got more of a warm tone like that rather than a cool tone. It's very well calibrated for being an LCD panel. The viewing angle is not quite as good, in my opinion, as OLED, and it's like 326 pixels per inch. So you're not going to see too many pixels. But if you compare it next to a 1080 or next to a 2K display, you're going to see the pixels on the iPhone 7. So overall, it gets plenty bright for most conditions. I would say a little bit hard to read sometimes in sunlight with this panel, but overall, it's a stellar panel for the iPhone 7 and nothing too much to complain about there. But the 5T, I think, has got a beat just because it's got a higher resolution, 1080p, and it's OLED, which right there beats the iPhone 7. Also, you can tweak it in settings to put it in different modes. So if you go into displays here, let's go to displays, and not only we're talking about quality here, you also have 18:9. Some people don't care about that, but you have that there. So if you go to screen calibration, you could change the calibration as I was just talking about here for the 5T. So if it was down to display, I would pick the 5T. If you really care a lot about display, just get the 5T. You'll enjoy it more than the iPhone 7. Okay, so let's discuss software here with the iPhone 7. Now, you're going to get iOS 11, which didn't slow down too much on the iPhone 7, so it's still very fast, and it's going to go to iOS 12. Now, there has been a little bit of battery issues for me for iPhone 7, but if you get a new battery replacement at 29 bucks, it should rectify that. And if you're buying a brand new iPhone 7, you're not going to have that issue. But software on the whole performs really good. We know what this stuff is. This is iOS, and you're going to get software updates for several years to come. So iOS is a very smooth operating system for the iPhone 7, but what does the 5T have to offer in comparison? So if you pick the 5T, what are you going to get in software? Well, you get Oxygen OS layered on top of Android 8.0 Oreo. Yes, the 5T got Oreo before the Samsung Galaxy S8. 5T, is going to be a super smooth, slick software. It's very smooth. It's almost like, 60 frames per second, but it's not that smooth, but it's pretty close looking to that. It's a very slick software here on Oxygen OS. It is questionable, the security of this software. There's been some rumors that it's not super secure. Depending on how you feel about that, I think it's pretty secure. I haven't had no issues with it, but that's really going to come down to you. If you're going to pick one of these in terms of the security and enterprise, it probably would go with the iPhone. But in terms of customization, mentioned, this phone has got everything. It's got a dark mode. You can change like the battery icons. Like it's really like a rooted phone here right out of the box. So Oxygen OS, very clean software. If I was choosing one of these two between them, I would just have to pick ecosystem, but both are pretty on point and about the same when it comes to overall reliability and being smooth and stuff like that. So just pick between Android and iOS for yourself, because both are going to give you an equal level of, enjoyment when it comes to their speed, performance, and reliability on the software. Also, in terms of updates, the iPhone will win, but the 5T is going to get plenty of updates for at least 2 years. So this is a great phone for software as well. Okay, so what about their performance on both phones? A10 CPU is technically faster than the Snapdragon 835. It's been proven in tests and the results, but the 835 tends to score better sometimes in multitasking. But at the same time, this phone is going to give you 6 gigs of RAM for the same price as 2 gigs of RAM. But remember how the Android ecosystem works versus the iOS platform here. It's more mobile here, so it's a very fast phone even on 2 gigs of RAM. And this phone is very fast with 6 gigs of RAM, one of the best around. But just taking a look at some of the applications, you could see the iPhone 7 pulls ahead there going in the clock here. You could see the 5T pulls ahead there. And it's basically going to be like that across the board when you are, going between apps. The 5T is going to have slicker, faster animations, but the iPhone 7 is going to keep up just fine. So again, performance is not the difference here between choosing between these two. Both are going to give you rock solid performance, and don't be fooled by the RAM differences. Android needs more RAM than iOS. But there's one area where the iPhone 7 just absolutely gets destroyed from the 5T, and that's the fingerprint scanner. So you can just see how quick that is. You don't even have to, hit any buttons to turn it on. It just automatically fires up once you put your finger on that. Also, Face Unlock here is available for the 5T, which is not available on the iPhone 7. That's only available on the iPhone 10. So the 5T's actually got that feature, but biometric security, like on this fingerprint, is really fast for both. But I still got to say, getting into your 5T is blistering fast in comparison to the iPhone 7. But at the same time, Touch ID authenticates purchases more in the App Store, so it can feel like you have more of a secure phone. And the iPhone is encrypted out of the box where the 5T is not. So security alone, I would probably pick the iPhone 7, but in terms of, convenience and fast, opening, locked phone, I would go with the 5T here between these two. Okay, so let's discuss the battery life between both of these. If you're picking one of these up, the iPhone 7 loses here. You can go ahead and watch the battery test I've done on both of these. I've actually done 2 on the iPhone 7 and 1 on the 5T. Links are down below in the description. But the 5T just keeps chugging along. And if you see my all-day battery test, it just took forever to kill the 5T, where it only took like 4 hours to kill the iPhone 7. So the difference here is a half a day phone for me on the iPhone 7, or maybe a little bit more than half a day. Maybe like if you wake up at 9 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock, it's gone. Goodbye. But on the iPhone or on the OnePlus 5T, you're like, okay, I still got like 10%. The day's over. I'm wrapping it up and I still got 10%. I like that. So 5T wins here on the battery life in my experience. Okay, so let's talk about the cameras. We're going to get straight into the sample photos I just took right here a minute ago. The iPhone 7 takes fantastic photos. I mean, the photos are very sharp, detailed, and it was touted as being one of the best smartphone cameras ever, and that remains true to this day. I mean, you get very good detail here, and it's kind of like the iPhone knows what to do to make sure the picture turns out pretty darn good here. So the 7 is definitely a reliable camera. It doesn't have portrait modes or anything like that due to it having a single lens on the rear. So it's just your basic, really good smartphone shooter. Now on the 5T, you get yourself portrait mode with that dual camera, although it's not, portrait camera, it's more for low light. They still included that portrait mode here to stay on the 5T. And you could see for this price point, you're still getting almost the same quality on the 5T. So again, it's a really close one. I think overall the iPhone 7 is a slightly better camera, but the 5T definitely gives you those really punchy, saturated photos that some people might really enjoy. So just like I say sometimes with the Samsung comparisons, if you want a saturated photo, get the 5T. If you want a more natural look, you want a more realistic look, you're going to edit it and post, get yourself the iPhone 7. Now in terms of video, I did find that the iPhone 7 was much more stable than the video on the 5T. So if you're in the video, you want the iPhone 7 between these two, and that's my assessment there on their cameras. Okay, so in terms of audio, externally, the iPhone 7 will win with its stereo sound, speaker at the bottom, speaker coming out of the earpiece. So this is a win if you want external audio, but it's a loss for the iPhone 7 if you want internal audio. So that is the 5T right here with the headphone jack here. So basically, let's take a look at the final score here. So after the full comparison, here's our final results. The 5T scored 3 out of these like 9 things we talked about here. The 7 scored 3, and they had 3 ties. So basically, it's a pretty close draw here between both of them, but how do we decide which one is for us? Well, since these phones were so close in the scoring, the iPhone 7 won 3, this one won 3, they were pretty close in a tie. How do you decide between these two? Well, we come back to one more thing, the ecosystem. Do you want to be on iOS or do you want to be on Android? Both of these are going to give you a pretty equivalent experience. Just the 5T, if you really like a big juicy display, you're going to want the 5T. This is going to be your phone here if you want that. Now, if you want secure, reliable software, you're going to want the iPhone 7. Now, I know iOS 11 has been a little bit buggy, but we know they're going to get better with 12, and you're going to get more software updates over time. So if you can live without that display, you might have a better experience on the 7, but if you love display, you might have a worse experience on the 7. So pick between ecosystem, display on the 5T, and secure software updates for the iPhone 7. Anyway, if you found this video helpful, enjoyable, do me a favor, click that like button for me. And if you're new here, consider subscribing for more comments, questions, concerns, drop them down below. Nick here, helping you to master your technology. Thank you for watching. You've been great. See you in the next one. Peace.